What's up, everybody? My name's Jandy. I am a photographer and filmmaker, and I specifically use Nikon cameras. Today, I was going to show you how I create film looks using my Nikon Z9 and my Nikon ZF using the plugin called Dehancer. Just a little note, Dehancer did reach out to me about making this video. However, they said to be as truthful and honest in my review as possible. So I wanted to get that out of the way before we get going. Anyways, let's jump right in and see what we can come up with. Today, we're going to be working in DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to walk through some footage from a shoot that I just did recently in Paris for one of my fashion clients, Patricia Nash Designs. They make fantastic handbags, by the way. Go check those out if you guys would be interested in that. So we were just kind of walking around. A lot of this was very natural light, and I was shooting all of it handheld on my Nikon Z9. I didn't have any sort of lighting modifiers on this. I am shooting in Nikon RAW, but I'm going to try my best not to use the RAW color panel down here to do any of my grading. But first, what I like to do is, as you can see, I've got my node tree laid out here. I've got my white balance, my levels, my contrast if I need it, and then HSV saturation, and then Dehancer. For my white balance, I do like to have my gamma in the linear channel. So that way all I have to do is go down here to my color wheels, and I can use the gain wheel to set my white balance. But the white balance is actually looking pretty good. One of the benefits of shooting in Nikon RAW is I can change the white balance in the Nikon RAW color tab. It is definitely overexposed. Like I said, I was not shooting with any lighting modifiers. I was trying to expose for my subject here. I can bring down my gain a little bit here, bring up my gamma, bring down my lift, just to give us a little bit more room to work with here. I'm going to bring down my highlights as well, and I'm just going to do those in the primary color wheels here. And I really like to have my scopes open in the bottom right-hand corner, so that way I can keep an eye on my exposure and my balance. So I love using this technique to get some really natural saturation out of my image. I set my color space to HSV, and then I turn channel 1 and channel 3 off. And then what you can do is you can actually increase your saturation using the gain wheel, and it gives you a much more natural saturation rather than that kind of artificial feeling saturation that you can get from using just simply the saturation slider in the color wheels. I really like to set it around like 1.25, 1.3, nothing too crazy. And I really like to send a good clean saturation into Dehancer so I know that the colors that I'm manipulating are accurate. All right, so jumping into Dehancer, now that we've gotten through kind of the basic balance side of things, as you can see, you've got your input, which I have set to DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate, because I have a color space transform node that I have at the very start of my node tree. So here in Dehancer, I don't really use the exposure compensation as much. I do use the temperature compensation because I like to have a more warm image. But usually what I do first is I come down to the print and I go ahead and enable that. So as you can see, this is very overexposed. And I'm going to go back over here to my levels node because I like to do my grading in steps. I'm going to bring down the highlights a little bit, bring down the midtones, bring down the shadows. And like I said earlier, this is a very overexposed image, but I think we can really pull something sweet out of here. Coming back over to my Dehancer node, I'm going to go ahead and enable my film stock. And I really like the Kodak Gold film profile. Here's one thing for the Dehancer team, if you guys are listening. I would love to be able to favorite my film profiles so that they're here up at the top on this drop down menu. So that way I'm not having to scroll all the way through. And I would love it if there's a way that I could easily jump back and forth to where I could compare different film stocks. So I'm going to go with Kodak Gold. On my print, I'm going to have Kodak 2383 because I love the look that it gives. Again, I'm doing all this live. I'm just kind of winging it. So let me know what you guys think. Film compression, I absolutely love. This is one of my favorite features of Dehancer. I love that it basically takes the highlights and the shadows and essentially puts a limiter on there to where whenever you're shooting a film stock, the whites aren't as blown out. They are a lot more flat across the spectrum, and I love that this film compression replicates that. And I love that you can turn the impact down and up. As you guys can see here, this is the impact all the way off. So you can see the highlights are a lot more powerful and they're really clipping pretty hard. But if you bring the impact down, you can see it kind of rounds off the highlights a little bit more, which is really nice. It kind of gives like an overexposed image like this a lot better of a look. Tonal range, I haven't really been messing with that too much, but I do like the color density where you can kind of give the luminance a little bit more color there. I'm pretty sure that's what that's doing. Um, in the print, I really like to take my target white a little bit more onto the warmer side of things. That's just me personally. I do love a warm toned image. And then from there, in the film grain, I usually only go like 65 millimeter ISO 50. I really like a finer grain. Some people like a thicker grain. That's okay. The higher the millimeter, the finer the grain. Halation, I don't use halation as much as I used to, but I love how realistic and subtle the halation is in the Dehancer plugin. And I really just bring it back down. I go very, very subtle. Sometimes I jump into the custom settings, but I don't really do those as much. Bloom, I love Bloom. Bloom's amazing. It's basically like having a black pro mist on the front of your lens. But again, I usually stick around the 65 millimeter, especially when I'm working with commercial work here. And then that's about all that I do within Dehancer. As you can see, this is with Dehancer off. So you've got your pretty standard Rec 709 image there, and then Dehancer on. It is a little bit yellow, a little bit green, but for a quick grade, it's looking great. So what I do after this typically is I will add a node, and then I will go down into the color slice down here in the bottom. I love, love, love the color slice in DaVinci Resolve because I can bring my blues down in the saturation. I can bring the skin tone back up. As you can see, the skin tone's starting to look a lot more rich. So that's why I don't really add as much color within Dehancer. I really like to tune it afterwards because Dehancer gives a really nice, rich film color and vibe. And then I will usually bring the yellow down just a little bit because sometimes the yellow can be a little overpowering. Bring up the skin just a little bit more. Let's give her skin a little bit less of a pop here. And I'm going to bring that blue and the cyan down. Another thing, you got to be careful using Dehancer. If you're shooting with products, you want your products to be as color accurate as possible whenever you're putting out your final image because you don't want to mislead the customer. That's one of my tips as a commercial photographer and videographer. It's a really nice image here. It's really, we got a nice, my computer's struggling a little bit, but we got a really nice warm image going on here. And then because I did shoot this in RAW, I might come down and adjust my color temperature a little bit, give it a little bit more warmth, bring down the highlights just a touch. I don't want to have it look like super HDR-y. And then in the color slice tab, I'll probably bring the saturation up to 1.1. So here's another grade that I did in Dehancer here where I kind of spent a little bit more time. And as you guys can see, it has kind of more of a warmer tone to it. I really, really love the looks that we can get out of here. I used Kodak Gold again. I put on the film compression. I didn't really have the impact on as much because I wanted those highlights to be a little bit more rich. And the tonal range is brought down a lot too. So one of my other favorite features of Dehancer is the color head. I love being able to dial in my midtones, my shadows, and my highlights within their tonal range. So as you can see here within the color head, if I want to change my shadow tone and I want them to be more cool, I mean, that's an extreme example, but they're certainly cool. And if you want to be more warm, bring more warm. Honestly, that doesn't look too bad. You can see the buildings here in the back. Take a look at how those are changing. I mean, it really warms up the texture of those buildings. The midtones probably won't warm those up as much. And then the highlights tone, just a little bit there. And then my impact, so you can see the difference there. And then if I disable that, enable that, it really kind of like brings out that warmer, richer vibe. And then as you can see here afterwards, I actually moved my HSV saturation to after Dehancer so I could saturate the images, the colors coming out of Dehancer. And that will go into my color space transform here. This is a shot that I shot on my Nikon ZF actually using an anamorphic lens from Sirui. And so this is going to be an example of how to grade 10-bit footage out of a ZF that isn't raw, Nikon raw. So I'll just start this one from scratch. So the white balance, I'm not really going to mess with too much. I do, again, really like using the linear gamma to set my white balance. But because this is such a stylized shot where it's somebody throwing a fishing net at sunset, I'm going to keep it pretty warm. And it's already pretty warm coming out of the camera. So the levels, I'm going to go over here to my color wheels. I'm going to bring my gain up just a little bit. I don't want to completely overexpose the highlights there. I'm going to definitely bring my midtones down. I'm going to keep this guy nice and silhouetted there. And I'm going to bring the shadows down. Bring the highlights down just a little bit. There we go. Bring my gain back up just a touch. I want to keep that detail in the highlights. I would much rather lose the detail in the shadows for this type of a shot here. Contrast, I already kind of did quite a bit of contrast there in my levels. Saturation, I'm going to go ahead and, again, using the gain wheel because I have this set to HSV. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, we've got a blank Dehancer DaVinci Wide Intermediate. I'm going to go ahead and go down and enable my print first. That really kind of blew the highlights up a little bit, so I'm going to go back to my levels. And I'm going to bring my gain down. I'm going to bring my highlights down just a little bit. I'm going to bring my midtones back up because it's becoming a little too silhouette-y. Okay, so going back over here to my Dehancer, you can see that there's a lot of blue in the water. I mean, obviously, it's water. But I kind of want this entire image to just have that nice gold pink Savannah sunset, even though this was outside of Savannah. So I'm going to go back up and I'm going to enable my film stock here, and that got rid of a lot of the saturation that I like. So I might honestly leave that off and just work within a Kodak 2383 film print. So I'm going to go into film compression, turn that on. Love this feature so much. Look at how much it's rolling off those highlights, but in like a healthy way. It's not in a very destructive way. I really, really like that a lot. Tonal range. You can see if you overdo it, if you over crank it, it's a little too much. But for this type of an image, it kind of works a little bit here. Yeah, look at that. That's just literally after just like 2 settings. The before and after is wild. I think it's a little too saturated, so I'm going to come back here to my HSV saturation. I'm going to drop that down a little bit. I'll probably add another saturation node after this Dehancer node just to drop that a little bit. Maybe. We'll see. So my target white, give it a little bit more warmth. Oh, man. Yeah, that's romantic. I'm going to bring the exposure up just a little bit. That contrast is nice, honestly. Color density, that's where you could maybe drop some of that saturation there. Halation, 100% going to add halation to this shot. I'm actually probably going to go with the 16mm halation. I mean, look at what it just did to that figure right there. Let's drop down that amplify a little bit there. Before and after, looks great. Bloom, a little too much there, a little too romantic. And then I'm not going to add any film damage or film breath or gate weave or anything like that. I'm going to make sure that my options are set to high, slow. Dehancer, I would love for the options to be at the top. Please. That would just be so great. So you don't have to scroll all the way down to disable all tools whenever you start out. So this is looking pretty great. This is before Dehancer. This is after. Playback's a little rough, but that's okay. I can tell what the color is going to look like. Yeah, that's looking nice. And again, this was shot on my Nikon ZF, which is not advertised as a cinema camera or anything. It's not a cinema camera. However, with tools like Dehancer, you can get a really, really beautiful image out of your Nikons. So closing thoughts, I would definitely suggest Dehancer to just about anybody that is curious about color grading. I'm using it at DaVinci. I've tried it out in Final Cut. I have not tried it out in Premiere. I really like using it in DaVinci because you can kind of work within the node tree, so you can have more of a step-based color grade, so that way it's not as destructive. I do wish maybe there was a way that each of the settings could be attached to their own node. Sometimes I do find in my grades within Dehancer, it can get a little chaotic because there's so many settings. But that's like super nitpicky. And that's also coming at it from the mindset of a node-based color grade rather than like a settings-based color grade. Dehancer is amazing. I really, really like this footage. Can you get this look without Dehancer? Yes, absolutely. This is a wonderful program. Again, it's not going to make you a better filmmaker. It's just going to enhance your footage. They do also have an iOS app. I have not yet played around with that, but I was thinking about doing a video on that in the future. So let me know if this has been helpful for you. I am going to be making more videos about how to be a better Nikon filmmaker. I think that Nikons are incredible cameras and I love shooting with them. If you are interested in buying Dehancer, use the code JANDY in checkout and you'll get 10% off your purchase, and it'll also help me out a little bit. So anyways, if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. If not, that's fine too. All right, see you next time.